So in 2016, I was tasked with writing Love's Not Colorblind, Race and Representation in Polyamorous and Other Alternative Communities. And it's a book that covers like the heavy topic of racism, racial based systemic oppression. And at some point, I just sort of needed a break from it. And like NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, came up around the same time. So there's like November 2016, and Alana was way into NaNoWriMo, and a few other people I know were way into it. So I just sort of put Love's Not Colorblind down and wrote. Like, I ended up writing a longer book, the draft for a longer book that I just called For Hire. And then after that, I made it a point to finish Love's Not Colorblind and get that going. And then once that book released in March of 2018, I went back and looked at the For Hire thing, and I was like, maybe I like this. Maybe I like this enough to actually show it to people, and I showed it to Alana.
When we decided to first talk about the draft for Operator, I told him to tell me about the book instead of having me read the whole thing and give him feedback. And he was like, okay, so you meet these two characters and they're like teenagers, and he kept talking, and I was like, Kev, what's the plot? And he was like, well, when they're adults. And I was like, can you tell me what the inciting incident is for the plot? And he told me it happened on like chapter 11. And I was like, okay, so we're going to start at chapter 11 as the beginning of Operator, but take all the other stuff and like set it aside in a file, and we'll absolutely get to it. And so this is us getting to it.
So like we had made the decision to break up the initial draft of For Hire into two books and release the second half of it as Operator. And then once Operator is out, like Alana and I were like, all right, well, what are we doing next? And Alana was like, okay, well, what about the first half of the book? Let's go back in and redo that. Let's turn that into sort of a prequel novel. And I was like, we can't do that. Uh, by the time we had finished Operator, or by the time I had showed Operator, or showed the original For Hire draft to Alana, I had already written like bits and pieces of other stories set in the same universe. So the idea of doing a universe like greatly appealed to me at that point. So I didn't want to go and do Supercell right away, because then people would think, all right, well, here's this one book about Sana and Marcella, and then here's a prequel about Sana and Marcella. This universe is about Sana and Marcella. So I was like, let's do something else first. We went in a completely different direction with Audition, set in the same universe, even around the same time and featuring a couple of the same characters. And then once Audition was done, I was like, all right, now we can go back and do Supercell. And well, here we are.